Thanks everybody for being here. Let's see, Julie, so welcome. You just hopped in before and I missed it. If you want to chat where you're calling in from and what your role is, we'd love to kind of tailor our thoughts and comments towards the roles that you guys have. We have HR consultant, HR assistant, pretty similar roles. And Julie, love to hear from you and where you're from too, if you want to put it in the chat. But thank you everyone for coming today. It's so great to have some live attendees as we go through this content. It's going to be really great. And all right, so just want to put out there, we are going to end right at 11:45. No, you guys have things you need to get to. And so I'd love for Jacob if he could just introduce himself, if that's okay, with Higher Aligned, and we'll get right into it. So I'll pass this over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, let me click through here so I'm not clicking and trying to talk well at the same time. Yeah, super excited to spend some time with you all today. So my name is Jacob Crockett. I currently live in Lehi, Utah. We moved here a couple of years ago from Minneapolis, where I've spent the majority of my life. And live here. I have 4 daughters, live here with my wife and 4 daughters. So life is never dull, and I'm forever outnumbered, and it's awesome. I've spent most of my career in data science, so AI before it was cool, and have just always been fascinated by the relationships between data and real life, and how we can apply technology to make our lives better. Not just like, hey, can I get a McDonald's order 5 seconds faster better, but like genuinely finding more fulfillment and meaning in life, which I think is something that hopefully everybody's thinking about as we live in a world that's constantly, self-optimizing for how can we make things more efficient and, automate everything and essentially take the people out of work. So I spent a lot of time thinking about how we can make the way that we use technology and AI result in more happiness and more fulfillment in our lives and working relationships. So today I want to talk a little bit about why getting accurate on your culture matters. And so, like Krista mentioned, I'm the CEO and founder of Higher Aligned. We help teams hire people and grow in alignment with their culture, their actual culture and values. But I'm not going to talk a ton about Higher Aligned today. More about why getting accurate on your culture matters. So I want to start off with a quick story. So when I moved here to Utah a few years ago, I had been working at United Health Group, right? Fortune 5. When I was there, I think there were like 350,000 employees, which is just ridiculous. Left there to come to Utah and help start a blockchain incubator. And there were about 8 of us, and we had some Bitcoin McBillionaire who wanted to put a bunch of money in, and the CEO that they had hired started hiring a ton of people. Hired 150 people in the first 8 months as we were growing out a bunch of different companies. And it was absolute chaos, and it was fun for most of the time. And as we kind of hit our peak in the growth, I had some conversations with my boss, who was the CEO, around what culture we were actually trying to do. And I came to this realization that we had fundamentally different ideas of, number one, what we were trying to do, and number two, of what we had built. He believed that we had created a place where people felt that they were able to share their opinions, that they were able to disagree productively, that they, were in a safe environment where they were able to experiment and try new things, and that people actually cared about them, when in reality a very toxic work environment had been created where posturing and hanging out with people outside of work were the things that were rewarded and recognized instead of actually doing the work. He did not no, to no surprise, he did not agree with that, and it created a lot of conflict for us as we tried to figure out, okay, like here's where we are. It's important to be accurate on this if we want to fix it. Long story short, it wasn't ever fixed, and the company ended up crumbling in the next 18 months after that. And it's led to a lot of the work that I've been doing. But with that, one of the big things that were the outcomes of not knowing who we were and who we wanted to be and what we'd created, was that we were hiring the wrong people. We were implementing processes that just didn't work. We were saying that we rewarded and wanted one thing, and then actions were different. And so we ended up with a lot of people who were paid very well and did no work and just came to work to hang out, and ended up quitting, and nobody trusted anything across the whole organization. And it was a very negative experience for lots of people. I consider myself lucky that I can look at it and say, hey, this was a positive learning experience, but I'm one of the few people. And so this is kind of an extreme example of what can happen when you aren't accurate on what your culture actually is. So I kind of want to step back for a second. Culture is a word that I wish there was a better word for it, because it's very overused, and there's a lot of weight and baggage on it. If somebody's been at an organization where they touted culture and didn't really do anything about it, or it was weaponized, then it's negative, and it's a scary word. So maybe it's a swear word for them. Our working definition of culture that has been really useful is that culture is the shared beliefs and experiences of a group of people. And so one person doesn't get to decide what the culture actually is. A leader can determine, what their core values are, and they can throw them up on the wall. They can decide what benefits are going to be. They can decide what the holiday parties are going to be. And that drives into the shared experiences and beliefs, but it doesn't actually create what the culture is. The things that create the culture are if somebody walks by, or if somebody walks by somebody else and says something kind to them, and in passing, that creates the culture. If a leader yells at their team in a meeting and nobody tells them, hey, that wasn't okay, that has influenced the culture. And so it is a team generated experience, and it's something that is easily destroyed and easily changed. But it takes lots of time and intentionality to build a good culture around it. Another thing that I think is useful to talk about, and as I'm going and talking, as my friends can attest, I have no problem in talking a lot. If you have questions or thoughts, feel free to throw them in the chat. Or if you're like, hey, I don't agree with this, Jacob, I think you're wrong, I'll throw it in the chat, because I'd love to, or come off of mute or raise your hand. I don't know exactly how this webinar software works, but another thing that I think is really useful to recognize about culture is that there's no. I don't believe there's such thing as a good culture or a bad culture. Just useful or not useful. A couple of years ago, it was in the news and making the rounds, especially in the HR world, around what Elon Musk was doing and how he was sleeping on the factory floors to reach deadlines, and just creating a very high urgency, high hours worked environment. And the general takeaway from that was, wow, that's insanely toxic. How dare he do that? And one end, yeah, I would never want to work there. I like hanging out with my family too much. On the other end, there's a group of people that thrive in that environment, and they've done amazing things. The companies, objectively have grown a lot and met their goals and done things that otherwise nobody else would be able to do. It was a very useful culture. And the reason that it worked for them is because people were aligned with that culture. Right? If he would have hired me, I would not have lasted very long, because I would have, tried to leave at 4:30 to beat traffic and have dinner with my family. And he would have been like, no, here's your pillow. You get the factory floor. Um, and so recognizing what your culture actually is super important to help create alignment within your teams. Um, does reality match what you think your culture is? This worked for Tesla because they knew who they were and what their culture was, and they advertised with it. They led with it. So people who were attracted to that flocked to them. Most everybody else thought, yeah, I don't want that, and they didn't apply for the job. Um, but it created a really strong sense of alignment with them. Um, the the other thing here is being honest is always about how you are, is always way more important than looking good. Often we want to, be the shining example of what culture is, but it's more important that we're clear on who we are and what we want it to be than we are pretending that it's amazing. Um, it seems like, right, we have HR consultants, HR assistant, HR director, very much on this, very much in the realm of how do you help how do you help people, and specifically teams or other people, to facilitate and build build a culture that is useful. Um, One thing that I hear all the time as I talk with people is that they're powerless to fix the culture, and that's their CEO's job. We have talked with many, many companies who want to improve. They, want to get better, hire, all these different things, and then they're like, "Oh, yeah, our CEO views things differently. He or she thinks that the company's one way, and everybody else knows that it's really a different way, and so it won't work very well if we have to get accurate on this, and that they have to see that, because it will be really hard for them, and it's not worth that fight right now." Um, is that is that kind of misalignment something that you all see ever? I know there's a couple. If you're here, give a thumbs up or a thumbs down in the chat. Um, all right, at least Austin's seen it before. Um, so the right, often we think, hey, we can't fix this because we're not at the top. We're not the CEO. Um, often often HR is given, when the company is drawing lines of who's in charge of what, HR is, culture falls under HR. And then we view it as, oh, we got some more thumbs up there. That's cool. Didn't know that reaction could come. Often culture is tried to be something that you can program into an organization through procedures. And that definitely is a part of it. And there's a very local aspect of culture. There's lots of different research and theories, and I'm sure there's some of you on this call that could talk more to this than I even can. But that when you think of a culture at a company, as soon as that company has more than 8 to 10 people, you enter into a realm where there's actually local team cultures, and then the interaction of cultures, and you have a global culture. We work with a company that has 1,500 employees. In the business world, relatively small, and they have 100 different locations, and they have wildly different cultures at their different locations. Right? They're a retail organization. You walk into one of their stores. In one, their managers, super warm and fuzzy, will walk up and give you a hug. And in another, they'll bite your head off if your shoe's untied. And both of those, are working for them in certain areas. But if they were to hire somebody and go off of the baseline of the warm and fuzzy one and say, hey, we're such a warm and loving and work environment, and then somebody went to go work at the other one and had, their head bit off, they wouldn't last very long. What I'm getting at here is the idea that you can't fix your culture is flawed, because the culture is often in your immediate surroundings and within your sphere of influence that you can impact. And there's chain reactions all the time, right? We all have more influence than we think. Even if you were to just every day as you're driving in and out of your neighborhood, or you're at the grocery store waving to people or smiling or saying hi when otherwise you just have your headphones in, that will make an impact not only on the environment around you, but on the way that you view the world. And so there's so many things that each of us can do within our own spheres of influence to impact our local culture, which eventually will will have reverberating impacts on the culture around us within our larger organization. The way that I've seen this play out often is that a leader within a team, and I say leader because I am strongly against the idea that all managers are leaders and that all leaders are managers. Often the best leaders are people who don't have people reporting to them. But the ability to have an impact starts, and what we see in an organization is that an individual or a group of people will really align on what they're trying to do and why they're doing something, right? More than just, hey, let's hit our revenue goals. But it's, hey, we want to have a net positive impact on the world. For my work, it's can we make hiring better so that people love their work and that teams are more fulfilled. And as that starts to happen in an organization, right, that then bleeds into other groups, because other groups can see, hey, these people love what they're doing and they're performing super high and nobody's left. And it's not just because they're all watching Netflix while they work. And the other groups see it and they start to adopt those things. And so it's not a quick way to influence and to change culture, but it is a super fulfilling way to empower people that you're around and to get out of the trap of feeling like you're powerless. Okay, so a couple steps that I want to talk through with this. Number one is that hopefully these are things that you all can take away today and bring back to your teams or whatever your situation looks like. If you're in a spot where you can influence the whole company, the whole organization, or another organization, that's awesome. A lot of this, right? I'm passionate about this. I believe this is the best way to create high performing teams and places that people love to work. And so a lot of this, if you were to show up to my company website, it talks about this, because we've built a software that facilitates this. You don't have to use the software. There's things that you can do. And so I'm going to talk about it like that. And know that if you're like, wow, this is awesome, we can talk. So step one, getting accurate on your culture. As I talked before, culture is the shared beliefs and experiences of a group of people. Often when we say, hey, how's culture? The kind of lowest common denominator in terms of measuring culture, right? You have an employee NPS score or an employee engagement score. And the employee NPS score, right? Most of you probably know this, but the way it's calculated is you ask, how likely are you to recommend working here to a friend or family? 0 is very, not likely at all. 10 is very likely. And then people answer that, and you take the percentage of the people who answer 8, 9, and 10, if I'm remembering right, minus the percentage of people who answer 0 through 6. And that's your employer net promoter score. So you could have anywhere from a -100 to a 100. And that's the thing that's slapped on stickers and brochures of saying, we're an awesome place to work. People would recommend working here. The problem with that is that doesn't really reflect what your culture is, because you have all of these different teams and organizations, and each area is just so specific. And so what we find is the most useful way to get at what your culture actually is to gather stories. collecting real team experiences from people on your teams, right? If it's a small team, that's fairly easy. If it's larger, it gets a little more complicated. You can use tools, right? You can run surveys, you can do interviews. We found that I found some of the most effective ways to do this are with behavioral interview questions, right? Where there's no right or wrong answer. You're not leading them in any way. You're just getting them to try to share what they think. One of my favorite questions is, it's always, tell me about a time. Tell me about a time you went above and beyond in your job and how were you recognized for it? Somebody saying, hey, I worked late and, we got a pizza party. I worked extra hours. That's awesome. If that's the culture that's established and that's useful, fantastic. Like, you should try to align around that. And when you're hiring, hire people who think that way. If their answer is, hey, I noticed that there was something that was inefficient or was being done wrong, and I tried something and I messed up, but we got through it and made it better eventually. And like, my manager said, thank you. That's awesome as well. It is a very different type of work. Right. And so as you collect these stories, then you can surface patterns and insights from them. In today's world, right, 3 years ago, an effort to do that would be a full-time and a half job of thinking through and reading these things and interviewing people, and then struggling to keep it all in your brain as you tried to identify these patterns and stories that you've seen. Now, you could create a Google form, ask these questions, tell me about a time, ... a couple of them, whatever. Ask ChatGPT for the 3 behavioral interview questions, or I'm sure you all just have your favorite ones. Ask them, and then literally take the Google sheet that comes out and dump it into ChatGPT or your favorite large language model AI tool, and ask it to surface. Say, hey, what are the patterns? Like, what's important here? What's our culture? What things are we really good at? Where are we not on the same page? And it will give you really great insight into, number one, what the shared beliefs and experiences are of the team. Do they believe that creativity is rewarded? Do they believe that if they work hard, that they're going to be recognized for it? Right? If they try, that they're going to be rewarded. If not, you probably have an underengaged and underperforming team. And something that's really cool to do with this as well is you can input your own core values, right? Most companies have them. Some have them plastered on the wall. Very few talk about them a lot. It's always impressive when people can name them off the top of their head. And what you can do is you can even ask ChatGPT to say, hey, here's what our core values are. Here's what our core values are. Collaboration, like we work together, we win together as a team or something. Innovation, like we reward taking risks to make things better. With whatever it is, you can throw that in ChatGPT, throw the results of this survey that you did, or even just call transcripts if you're interviewing people, and it will be able to show you fairly well, hey, where are the gaps, with insights into those. And then you, as a leader, in whatever capacity that is, even if it's you're an individual contributor on a team and you're trying to make your team better, you can say, hey, look, this is what we see. We see that on collaboration. We're not intentional about it. There's, good patterns of people working together and trying new things, and working together for better outcomes, but we don't encourage it. That's something that is so easy that a person can bring into a meeting and just bring it up and talk about it, and really raising awareness of this. And where this comes into play with the importance of actually being accurate on your culture is now, hey, maybe we're not going to be ranked, the #1 collaborative company in Atlanta, but we're working towards it. And you can talk about it in ways that are more useful and genuine, that take away all of the negative impacts of being inaccurate with your culture, right? Where people are, they lose trust because they hear one thing and they see another. They become disengaged because they recognize that, they essentially think they're playing a different game than what somebody's saying the rules are within work. And so as you identify these gaps, that will help you to make actionable steps that you can take, and you can even send it up, right? I've had about a 50-50, more positive than negative probably, experiences in my career of trying to do things like this, recognizing, hey, this could be better, and then sending it up the chain to my boss or my boss's boss and saying, hey, here's some interesting things that we could try. If you get immediate pushback, it's probably a good sign that you might not want to live there. You might not want to work there forever because you're misaligned with the culture that exists. But I think the thing that is really important to recognize with this as well is that culture is a living thing, right? If culture is the shared beliefs and experiences of a team, and today's Wednesday, and after lunch somebody's gonna walk through and share that they had something really hard happen in their personal life, and people rally around them and show support and love, and the manager says, hey, look, like, go home early, take the afternoon off, like, go spend time with your family. That is now a part of the culture where there's care and love, as hokey as it sounds, in the workplace. It's constantly changing. As you go to hire somebody, and however they are, their experiences, they come on the team, that starts to change the culture of it. With this, the one thing that's really important to recognize is that with culture shifting and changing, you can't do this exercise here just once. This is something that you continually have to be working on to be accurate about where your culture is today. Because it's going to be changing, and that's awesome that it's changing. And because it's changing, you need to understand where you are in order to be able to accurately put it to use. And so a lot of people we talk to, when they start to realize, hey, look, we can get more than just a multiple choice survey, we'll start to change the way that they measure employee engagement. Survey fatigue is a real thing. If you don't think it is, your response rates are probably low. You have to be careful about how frequently you're asking people to engage, especially when the information they share is not acted upon. When people share these things, they're expecting things to change, or at least the way we talk to change. And that's really the best way to build trust. And so as you figure out a way to incorporate a regular check-in and a better understanding of, okay, what's your culture? That will create more trust. Number one, because you're actually looking at it, and your idea and the way you talk about your culture will be closer to reality. And number two, people value honesty. And a lot of people say, everybody agrees with that, and people's actions don't align with that. Frequently, as leaders, we think we need to put on the mask that we have everything figured out, and that we know exactly where the ship's going and where it's steering. And when we don't, and people know that, it often creates that lack of trust and buy-in, where people start to look elsewhere. And people leaving for jobs is not the worst thing. Like, it's a good thing. And I think that we can just all do a better job of creating professional relationships where we have higher levels of trust and transparency. Okay. Before I jump into kind of the next thing and start to wrap up, any questions, comments, thoughts? Feel free to unmute, type in there. Anything resonate with you? Anything that you're like, wow, that was amazing, Jacob, you're so cool, or wow, you're crazy. I don't agree with you.
I'll pipe in. I just wanted to say I've never thought that culture couldn't be described as good or bad, and I think what you said totally rings true to me that it's useful or not useful. I think about, your business is hire aligned, and I think about you can have an existing culture, and then if you hire someone who doesn't match the existing culture, that can kind of enter an issue of like a bad actor or something where people who were once happy in their existing culture now have maybe a toxic coworker or something, and that can make them leave. So it's little things like that, and if you're not doing those regular check-ins, you can miss things like that. So one thing I think is really helpful that I've seen with companies is to have a suggestion box, because you mentioned like they need to listen, they need to actually do what the survey results say, right? But you can't listen to every single
Yeah.
suggestion. Some people might be like, I want more money or I want more paid time off, and maybe that's just not a logistical thing that the business can do. But if you have a place where they can anonymously provide suggestions and then they can choose to be responded to, then maybe it could be just an opportunity for the company to say, this is why we can't, support this um, suggestion or whatever, but we really appreciate you sharing it. So that's just one thought I had, is that can be really helpful for businesses.
Yeah. A quick a quick story on the your first thought. Um, I worked somewhere, and so I worked in data science, right? Traditionally, high paying technical jobs. Um, I was building a team. It was a mix of data people and software engineers, and we needed a certain skill set to hire. Large language models. Essentially, could you take a really small computer and put something like ChatGPT and run it exclusively on there without access to the internet? For the reason doesn't matter. There was somebody who is awesome. Like, he is still somebody I look up to and is a genius and amazing. And he came on and his hire was supposed to solve our problems. I'm like, hey, he's gonna help us figure this out. And we were fundamentally misaligned in the way that the existing team worked and the way that he wanted to work. And we missed it when we were hiring him. And so it came in and he had lots of ideas of, hey, we need to explore these things and do this. And the existing team was like, hey, we are trying to take things to customers yesterday. And it ended up, we spun our wheels for 6 months, and it cost $1 million in lost salary and opportunity between all of the people working on it. And so it's a big deal if you're not able to say, hey, and actually know, how do we work together? What is our culture? So yeah. Any other thoughts? All right, cool. We'll keep rolling. And we're starting to wrap up, right? So we talked a little bit about how you can get accurate on your culture, right? Getting stories, understanding motivations, like use AI for this. You could, do it all manually. At this point, it's silly to do, because especially if you have more than a few, your brain, our humans' brains can't hold all of these things at once. And ChatGPT is literally designed to do that. So now that we know, what can we do with this? Number one, we can hire way better. Most people, studies show that most people who leave jobs or get fired, it's over misalignment of culture. Bad culture fit is what people say. And all of you have probably been involved in hiring or helping other people hire enough to know that bad culture fit also is the worst excuse ever, because it's just saying, hey, there's something there that you don't get along with, you don't like, and really it's not a useful way of looking at of hiring. And so because you're not accurate on who you are and what your culture is. Once you're accurate, it's a lot easier to point and say, hey, here's who we are. How does this person align with this? And this is not, hey, we are all, Seahawks fans here, and so they better be a Seahawks fan. Culture is way deeper than the water cooler conversations. It's deeper than political alliances, right? I have a close friend that we get along great, and he it was like a year into our friendship that he realized that we voted for different people, that we view the world in a very different way. And it's just awesome to see that we're still great friends. We're motivated by the deeper thing of, hey, we want to make the world a better place. And so that you can hire with clarity. You can have better conversations within your teams that will lead to more trust and engagement, because people feel like you're actually operating from a place of honesty and accuracy instead of pretending that you're something that you're not, even if you aren't intentionally pretending. This also allows the team to make way more informed and strategic choices about how teams are organized and the work to be done, in recognizing we're good at this, we're not good at this. We need to improve in these things. Where can we focus? Where can we allocate our resources? And that leans into as well being able to target development opportunities with more accuracy. This goes for both individuals, but also teams. And I think the team is all the awareness of a gap is the large majority of the effort that needs to be. It's the biggest thing that needs to be done in order to improve. We all like to live in our fantasy worlds that everything's great and we're not the problem. But as we recognize, hey, look, our team is bad at communication, then you're able to do a little bit more with that. So just to kind of wrap up, right? Culture is shared experiences and beliefs of a group of people. It's not the holiday party. It's not the benefits. Those do come into it because they affect what people believe and experience. But they are not the culture. Number two, alignment over aspiration, right? You want to be aligned and recognize what's useful, not aspire for something that you never are or will be, and that, wouldn't be useful for you anyhow. Number three, we all have way more influence than we think. Start doing these things. You can do it with your team. You can do it at a really small level. If you feel totally powerless at work, go home and do this with your family or with your friends. And you just be more aware of the experiences people are having. And then you can improve, right? Number four, get accurate and then act. As we understand where we're starting from and where we're standing today, then we can actually make changes. If you're not accurate on where you're at, how your culture is, how your team works, what they believe, what their experiences are, a lot of the efforts are in vain because you're starting from the wrong place. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I spend way too much time on LinkedIn. Jacob Crockett spelled like Davy, sadly no relation. Or you can email me, jacob@higherline.com. We help companies with a lot of this through the software we've built. Thank you so much for having me on. This is I thought it was fun, but I talked the whole time. So
I thought it was great too, Jacob. Awesome. And yeah, I know that Higher Line, you guys are doing amazing things and well equipped to manage this. And thank you so much. I wanted to just add one last thought. And I just thought about, like, I used to be more in the product world. And, when you buy something online, if it can be a really great product, but if it's not what you expected it to be, you're disappointed and you might leave a bad review. And it's the same thing with companies. Like if it's not what you expect it to be when you get in there, you're going to be disappointed. And so it's super important to make sure you know what your culture is, and then make sure that that's what you're advertising to potential new hires. So I loved everything you shared, and it helped my perspective, especially with that term of culture and what that really means. So thank you so much, Jacob. And if you want to just send back the control over to me, I just have one slide to share. That'd be great. Just a reminder that this is a SHRM PDC eligible webinar, 0.75 credits, and we will be sending you guys the link to that, so you can make sure you get those credits and the link to the recording. And just, let's see, share. Okay. So just wanted to share about our next webinar, which is on March 11th. We do try to have these webinars every second Wednesday of the month at 11 to 11:45. and we'll talk about the do's and don'ts of replying to employee reviews. So Mobrium, we kind of cover that external facing of what your company is like so that you hire the right people. A lot of people look at Glassdoor, Indeed, Comparably, in her site for an idea of what kind of place they are looking at to work at. And so we help companies have an accurate reflection on the outside facing. And we do also do suggestion boxes, like I mentioned earlier. But yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for being here, and hope you have a great rest of your day. It was awesome having you all. And let's see. I just wanted to share what Austin said. He said, I think the ongoing engagement, structured one-on-ones, and team meetings is incredibly critical. Love the topic and discussion about trust and transparency. There's an incredible amount of hesitation of fear and being transparent, which we need to overcome. So true. We need to just admit our faults, because that's how we can make changes to be better and be a better organization. So thanks again, everybody. And thank you, Jacob. And hope you guys have a good rest of your day and a good rest of your week.
Thank you.